Okay, so let's talk today about why have I got a Breitling Antares World. Before we get into it, one thing I need to make clear, these why I've got this watch episodes are not critiques, they are not reviews. I won't be going into a lot of facts and figures about the watch, although today I'll do a bit more than usual because it's a more unusual watch. But it's very subjective. It's how did I get this watch? How did I respond to this watch? And in this particular case, why have I still got this watch? If that's of interest to you, keep watching. You know what? Even if it's not, there's going to be a lot of pretty pictures of aeroplane, of a watch you probably haven't seen before. So if worst comes to worst, turn the sound off and just watch the pictures. See you on the other side of the introduction. Okay, so for these Why This Watch episodes, I usually don't do a lot of facts and figures, but most of you have probably never heard of the Breitling Antares series, so I figured I'd do a little bit more than I usually would. Okay, so the Antares line, including in this case the World, the GMT version, was part of the Wind Rider series. The Antares ran from about 1991 to 1996. The watch is only 38 millimeters across and just 9 millimeters thick. Not dimensions that a modern watch enthusiast expects to hear of a Breitling. Powered by a B32 movement, so that's essentially an ETA 2893. It's a tracker GMT with some really cool little classy extras like the gold rider tabs and the aircraft motif GMT hand. Okay, so that's what the watch is, but how did I get it? Why is it mine? Little bit of history. I got into watches as I was getting ready for a major birthday. I thought, you know what, a watch would make a good present to myself. I ended up buying a Frederic Constant Classic Index GMT. Even before I was into watches, when I couldn't tell my horological ass from my elbow, I already knew that the romance of travel and GMT functions was going to attract me. So even when I thought I was going to be a one and done watch owner, it was always going to be a GMT. When I realized that watches were going to be my thing, that I was going to get into them more, then I immediately knew I was going to start collecting GMTs. I've always thought that shopping catalogs make great research tools. When I was in fact, I still do photography. When I got into photography, I found that the BH website was a fantastic way of knowing more about lenses and cameras and tripods and monitors and all this other stuff simply because it was there and it inspired you to do more research. I've used Chrono 24 the same way. Chrono 24, nowhere else that I can find will give you as wide a variety of potential options to get into, which is why I not only buy a lot of watches from there, Chrono 24 has become an essential research tool for me. And that's kind of always been the case. From the moment I got into watches, I was using Chrono 24 that way. One of the first things I did was I set up wide parameter searches. All brands, less than $5,000, GMT, automatic, used, between certain dates is one of the, for example, is one of the searches I run. That gives me hundreds, thousands of watches to look at, often watches you don't even realize exist. You scan through, look at the photos, do more research. That is how I first found the Breitling Antares. So the Breitling Antares caught my eye as I went through that search. I then quickly, remember this is 2016, I am just getting into watches for the first time, just picking it up as a hobby. So I remembered Breitling from 20 years ago before I had anything to do with watches. And so it was a brand that triggered my interest and I had some fond feeling about because, as a kid, I'd been into airplanes. I was in the Air Force. I had this aviation feel. Breitling was associated with that. As I looked into it, in 2016, I saw that Breitling was kind of on the nose with a lot of collectors. I must admit, at the time, I didn't like a lot of what they were doing then, but I could sense a turnaround. So it looked like a brand. It was a brand which historically I was interested in. It was a brand whose current day looked like it was turning in a good direction, and therefore it was a brand I was happy to associate with. So, having got through that sort of part of it, it was now a case of looking deeper into this particular watch, the Antares, and deciding, is this something I wanted to get? And from the moment I started looking at it, what I saw was this was a watch I loved. Right size, right price, right complication. It had the style, the shape, the flair that I remembered that a Breitling should have through my kind of dim memory. Interestingly, because I had skipped the whole massive watch phase of the 2000s, this little 38mm killer was my idea of what a Breitling should be. At the time, and even now, this watch had a combination of function, fashion, and fun that I could really enjoy. I loved the curvaceous case shape. It's reasonably discreet size, but without being small. I love the detail of the engraved dial, the playful aircraft hand that they use as the GMT hand, and the usefulness of the bezel rider tabs, the 100-meter water resistance, and the sapphire crystal. It is funny when you look at this watch, which I was looking at in 2016, which originally came out in 2019, that looking at this watch and what it represents in 2022, it's terribly contemporary. It's very relevant today. It's a 38mm watch. It has sapphire crystal and all of the stuff you'd expect. A really solid GMT complication, which is very much the complication of the day. 100 meters water resistance, 9mm thick. Those things about the watch, as well as just its sheer beauty and fun and just playfulness, attracted me to the watch in 2016 and make me think now it's a really relevant watch today. So ultimately, that's why I bought it, that's why I've still got it, and that's why I still love this watch.